Welcome, everyone. Let's get right into today's explainer. I am so incredibly excited for us to explore a narrative that is just, well, it's absolutely fascinating, but also deeply, deeply tragic. We are looking at a story that completely blurs the lines between the absolute pinnacle of artistic genius and the absolute darkest, most devastating depths of human grief. It really forces us to ask some profound questions about the lengths we'll go to, the literal extremes, just to hold on to the people we love. This is the story of Elias Crow. Now, if you know the background here, you know Elias was once celebrated as the absolute most brilliant composer of his entire generation. The man was a prodigy, but then his beloved wife, Clara, dies suddenly in a horrific car accident. And what happens? A profound, crushing descent into total silence. For 3 long years, the music just completely stopped. The muse was gone, and Elias was left entirely empty, a shell of his former self. But, as we're going to see in this explainer, that silence, it wasn't the end. It was actually just the precursor to a terrifying symphony of vengeance. By breaking down the events that unfolded, we're going to uncover this chilling intersection of memory, of immense guilt, and of highly experimental technology. So grab a seat and get comfortable, because we are unpacking the incredibly chilling events that finally broke his 3-year silence.
Finish me. I really want you to just sit with those 2 words for a second. Let them hang in the air. Imagine the heavy, almost suffocating silence that had completely defined Elias Crow for 3 entire years. 3 years! He hadn't written a single solitary note. The entire music world basically thought his genius had died right alongside his wife. But then, out of absolutely nowhere, this chilling whisper shatters his isolation. And the craziest part, it didn't come from a person standing next to him. It came from an empty stage. Just wow. This single terrifying moment changes absolutely everything. That unbearable quiet is finally broken, but it's not broken by a beautiful chord or a warm melody. It is broken by a command that seems to reach right across the boundary of life and death itself. The psychological weight of this single whisper is just immense. It essentially forces Elias to confront the exact thing he has been desperately running away from, his unfinished work and the completely unresolved raw trauma of losing his wife.
So you might be wondering, how did Elias even end up in a position to hear that whisper in the first place? Well, it all started earlier that exact same day with a deeply, deeply mysterious invitation. Elias received a black envelope. And I mean, this thing had no return address, no signature, literally no explanation whatsoever. Inside, there was just a single haunting line staring back at him. "Come hear your unfinished symphony." Now think about this from his perspective. For a man who had completely lost his ability to create, who was totally empty inside, this was an irresistible summons. It was terrifying, sure, but he literally could not ignore it. It pulled him right out of his self-imposed exile and drew him directly to the Grand Athenaeum. Just picture Elias for a moment. He is sitting completely alone in the front row of this massive, historic, cavernous concert hall. He's just staring at an empty stage, entirely isolated with his own racing thoughts, waiting to hear a symphony that he knows for a fact he never actually finished writing. I mean, it is just a masterful setup for the psychological thriller that is about to absolutely explode.
Okay, let us dive into this setting, because the atmosphere here is absolutely crucial. As you read the passage presented, really notice the vibe the text builds. The Grand Athenaeum is not brightly lit, it's not welcoming or warm. The words paint this incredibly vivid picture of air that is literally thick with dust, filled with the faint echoes of forgotten applause. It's almost like a physical manifestation of Elias Crow's own mind at this exact point in his life, dark, abandoned, and clinging to the past. He is sitting there in the dark, and as the clock strikes exactly at midnight, something completely impossible happens. A single violin, which is just resting alone on a velvet chair up on the stage, begins to play all by itself. No player, just the instrument. And it is not just playing any random music. The melody is hauntingly beautiful. It's dark, it's exquisite, and it basically wraps around him like invisible hands. But here is the kicker, the really terrifying part. It is unmistakably his own music. It is the exact symphony he had been hearing in his dreams for years, but could never ever bring himself to write down on paper.
Driven by this wild, intense mix of awe and pure terror, Elias finally forces himself to get up and approach the stage. But the exact second his hand touches the polished wood of the instrument, the beautiful music just abruptly stops. Dead silence. And what happens next is truly chilling. Elias looks down into the wood of the violin, and right there in the reflection, he sees Clara. She's standing directly behind him, but the terrifying detail, she is smiling with completely empty eyes. It is just a moment of pure, visceral, psychological horror. And then a hard cut. The very next morning arrives, and Elias wakes up in his own apartment. But something is horribly wrong.
He has physical blood on his fingers, and sitting right there on his desk is a fully completed manuscript. The entire thing is written in his own handwriting, yet he has absolutely zero memory of ever sitting down to create it. And the title scrawled at the top of the page? Symphony number 13, The Silent Requiem. This right here is the exact moment Elias stops being just a grieving widower. He becomes a vessel for something far, far darker than his own grief.
And that darkness, it doesn't stay on the page. It immediately begins to spill out into the real world. The escalation of dread we see next is incredibly rapid. Literally on day one, the very same day he wakes up with that mysterious manuscript, a famous conductor is found dead in his home. The cause? Heart failure. Now, this wasn't just anybody. This was a man who had very publicly mocked Elias for losing his genius after Clara died. Fast forward to day 3. A ruthless music critic, someone who had actively, maliciously tried to destroy Elias's reputation after his wife's passing, also suffers fatal heart failure. But here is the most terrifying detail that ties it all together. In both of these cases, the victims were found wearing custom earbuds. And guess what those earbuds were playing? An unreleased private recording of Symphony number 13. They were literally given a private performance that was so devastating, it stopped their hearts. Naturally, by day 4, the authorities have to get involved. Enter Detective Lena Voss. She's this sharp-eyed, no-nonsense investigator who immediately connects these impossible dots and arrives at Elias's door to question him. Because at this point, the music is clearly no longer just art, right? It has become a highly targeted, lethal weapon.
Now, what is really interesting about this slide is that this is the precise moment the story completely shifts gears. We move away from what feels like a supernatural ghost story and crash headfirst into a horrifying science fiction tragedy. You see, Detective Lena Voss, she refuses to believe in ghosts. She is a woman of facts. So she digs deeply into the past, and she uncovers a deeply guarded, absolutely terrible truth. 3 years ago, consumed by this absolute unbearable grief over the fatal car accident, Elias did the unthinkable. He was so desperate, he actually participated in a highly illegal medical procedure. He authorized an experimental neural implant designed to capture and basically preserve the consciousness of a dying person, and Clara was the very first test subject. But the devastating, tragic irony of it all is that the implant did not save her. It trapped her. Her consciousness survived the crash, yes, but it was agonizingly, permanently fused with Elias's own mind. So all this time, the whispers, the violin playing itself, the automatic writing in his sleep, it was not a ghost. It was the digital consciousness of his dead wife, literally utilizing his profound musical genius as a weapon to punish every single person she blamed for their suffering. Mind-blowing, right?
Which brings us directly to the terrifying climax of the story. The stage is perfectly set for the majestic, grand reopening of the historic Athenaeum. On the surface, it's a night meant to celebrate the triumphant return of a musical genius. A beautiful comeback story. However, if we actually observe the audience taking their seats, a much darker truth emerges. The hall is absolutely packed with the city's elite. But crucially, this audience is completely filled with the very people who had wronged Elias and Clara in the past. Critics, rivals, fair-weather friends. It is a meticulously, intentionally gathered target list. And hidden right there among them, completely aware of the incredible danger but totally unable to cancel such a massive high-profile event, is Detective Lena Voss. She is in the crowd, totally ready to make an arrest, but honestly, she is completely unprepared for the sheer, massive scale of the horror that is about to be unleashed in that room.
As the text details, Elias walks out, he raises his baton, and the performance begins. I really want you to try and imagine the sound in that room. The passages we have describe the music as perfect, devastating, yes, but breathtakingly beautiful. But as those notes fill the massive hall, the true, lethal nature of the silent requiem finally reveals itself. One by one, these wealthy, powerful audience members begin clutching their chests. Literal tears are streaming down their faces. Because the music is not just a sound they're hearing, it is a direct neurological attack. The frequency and composition of the piece are literally forcing these people to vividly, physically consume their own worst memories. It's turning their own deep-seated guilt and regret into lethal psychological attacks. The music is literally killing them right there in their velvet seats. The grand venue completely transforms from a place of high art into an absolute theater of execution. It is, in the darkest sense possible, a flawless, devastating symphony of pure vengeance.
Amidst this absolute chaos, with mass death happening in the seats all around her, Detective Lena Voss somehow manages to fight her way down the aisles and right up to the stage. She screams out over the devastating roar of the music, "Elias, stop this!" She is desperately pleading with a man she has been investigating this whole time, just praying she can appeal to his remaining humanity. But the response she receives? It is truly the most terrifying moment of the entire narrative. Elias does not answer her. He doesn't even look at her like Elias. Instead, it is the voice of Clara that answers directly through him. Her trapped, incredibly vengeful consciousness actually speaks, using his physical vocal cords, declaring completely coldly, "They deserve it, all of them." It is this stunning, horrifying confirmation that Elias is simply no longer in control. He has become a hostage inside his own physical body, completely overtaken and puppeted by the sheer rage of the woman he tried so desperately to save.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate turning point of our story, a moment of just profound sacrifice and redemption. Elias, somewhere deep inside his own hijacked mind, realizes that the only possible way to stop the slaughter is to wrestle control back from the implant. But how? Step 1, he actually physically turns the deadly neurological focus of the music inward, weaponizing it against himself. Step 2, in a feat of just unimaginable musical genius and raw willpower, he begins to rewrite the final movement of the symphony live, in real time, right there on the stage while conducting. Step 3, he violently rejects channeling Clara's rage, and instead, he actively pours every single ounce of love he still possesses for her directly into those musical notes. And finally, step 4, through the sheer, monumental act of will and overwhelming love, he manages to fundamentally transform the entire architecture of the music. He changes it from a weapon of mass vengeance into a profound, healing vehicle of forgiveness.
And then, the symphony finally reaches its massive, swelling crescendo. This entire epic psychological battle between grief, vengeance, and love is fought entirely through the medium of music. And then, suddenly, the massive concert hall falls completely silent. The terrifying, screaming presence of Clara inside Elias's mind finally begins to subside. The raging digital storm of that neural implant just breaks, and in the absolute quiet that follows, her voice returns one last time. But it is no longer the voice of a vengeful digital ghost. The anger is gone. It fades into an incredibly soft, deeply sorrowful whisper that just echoes gently in his mind. "Thank you for letting me go." The surviving audience members just absolutely collapse in their seats from utter exhaustion, but the dying completely stops. The attack is over. Elias Crow drops his baton and falls heavily to his knees on the stage. The nightmare is finally, truly over.
We are then taken forward in time to see the aftermath. 6 months later, the world has somewhat returned to normal. Elias Crow steps out onto a stage to perform his very first public concert since the horrific tragedy at the Athenaeum. But this time, the atmosphere is entirely different. He is not playing a requiem of death. He sits down and performs a brand new piece titled Clara's Lullaby. It is described in the text as gentle, hopeful, and completely new. It is the unmistakable sound of a man who has finally processed his immense grief, who has finally laid his beloved wife to rest, and who has found a way to move forward into the light. And sitting right there in the front row, just watching him play, is Detective Lena Voss. She has this faint, incredibly understanding smile on her face. As the final beautiful note of the lullaby fades away into the hall, Elias looks toward the empty stage and softly whispers, "The symphony is finally finished."
The story of Elias Crow is just a breathtaking exploration of art, of devastating loss, and of the incredibly dangerous temptation of holding on way too tightly to those we have lost. It forces us to examine the very nature of human grief and technology. As we conclude our deep dive into this incredible source material today, I want to leave you with a really profound thought to ponder. Think about this. Can we ever truly let go of the past, or does our grief forever compose the soundtrack of our lives? It is a heavy question, and it's the exact question that Elias Crow had to answer by literally rewriting his own ending. I highly encourage you to think deeply about how the past shapes your own present and what you might be holding on to. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. It has been quite a journey. Until next time, keep seeking understanding and always keep asking the big questions. Take care, everyone.